And so I put together, by the way, this was just off the top of my head right before I came out here, just how many times I've heard that Meghan was crying, that she was in a heap, that she was in a pile on the floor. So we know she cried over the bridesmaid dresses. We know that she admitted publicly that she cried the night before the Oprah interview premiered. The interview that she orchestrated, that she shot, that she sat down and accused the royals of being racist. Then she wants you to feel bad because she cried the night before she accused them of being racist, only to then tell us months later that, no, we never said that the royal family was racist. I mean, they're just going to gaslight us. She cried after the royal household issued a denial regarding a negative story about Prince William. She was very sad because she, I guess, wanted that story to be confirmed. She told us that she cried when she called Tyler Perry, who was a perfect stranger and who she did not know. She said she completely lost control and she sobbed on the phone to him, and it was easier to talk to him because he was a stranger. No, it wasn't easier to talk to him because he was a stranger. It was easier to talk to him because he was a billionaire.
Okay, so there's this common theme in this victimhood culture that we have, and she's literally a princess now, right? Or royalty or whatever. Anyway, she's married into the royal family. She had a wedding that little girls only dream of, and very, very few women or people ever experience anything like that. She's got every advantage in the world, and all she can do is cry about how poorly she's been treated, about how things are unfair to her. To her, things are unfair to her. Can you imagine? She is making a living off of being a victim. She's like the royal grifter of them all, and I hope nobody is taking lessons because it's the last thing we need more of in this world.
I knew that you wanted to go back to LA and that Canada was always going to be a pit stop. From the very beginning, this woman orchestrated leaving the royal family because all she's ever wanted in her life was to be an A-lister in Hollywood. She did not have the talent to become an A-lister in Hollywood. She was relegated to a D-list actress spot on a show called Suits that nobody in America had seen, but apparently, which Prince Harry lets us know, Kate and William were fans of, right? And so in order to get what she wanted, she called Tyler Perry and said, and Tyler Perry offered her his home, which is in Hollywood. And that is where she went, and that is how she left Canada, claiming that it was for privacy reasons, when in reality, it's because this woman wants to be famous, desperately wants.
You don't parade all around the globe, throwing yourself in front of cameras, telling everybody how difficult your life is if you want privacy. I mean, that's not how I go about having privacy. Is that how y'all go about getting privacy?
To be famous on her own terms. But let's keep going. She cried for Tyler Perry on the phone. She cried, don't forget, when she landed in America after their freedom flight. You know, they just record every moment of their lives, not because they're planning to have a Netflix docuseries and to sell their family down the river for $100 million, because that's just normal. They always just capture moments of themselves. And she said when she landed, she ran into some person's arms and said, I really tried for 2 years to fit into this family before I realized I didn't want to be here. And that was from the very beginning, because you were never planning on serving the British public. You are an American through and through who wants to climb the ladder. She says, she goes on in this book and details, Prince Harry details, how he had a call with his brother that was on speakerphone. She was not meant to hear it. She overhears it, and then she has tears in her eyes, and she's holding her pregnant belly. I actually want to read it because it's such an absurd sentence that he managed to put together that is worthy of reading. He said, Willie was being so loud, even with the speaker off, she could still hear. So pardon, the speaker was off. The tears in her eyes glistened in the spring sunshine.
This is sounding like daytime television at this point.
I started to say something, but she stopped, shook her head. Holding her stomach, she turned and walked back to the house. Yep. So it's another time that she cried, a call with Will. And then, of course, I think the biggest incident of her crying took place at Frogmore Palace on the day that she decided that she was going to force Harry to say that they were going to leave the royal family. And how did she do this? By threatening to kill herself and to kill her unborn child. And then she tries to tell us this was Harry's idea to leave the royal family. No, it was Harry's idea that you seeded into his mind intentionally by claiming that you were just about to kill yourself and your unborn child. It is.
When I was growing up, we actually had princesses who we could look up to and royal family members that we could look up to. I'll never forget Princess Diana's wedding and the way that she conducted herself as a member of the royal family. And it's a shame that young girls today are seeing, who can stretch themselves the furthest to be the largest victim in order to gain some notoriety or some sort of celebrity status. It's really a horrible thing to be reinforcing among our youth.
Completely psychopathic for a person to hold their stomach and say, I want to end my life because I'm so miserable here. Of course, she is expecting that in response, Harry will say, let's leave the UK. And that's exactly what he did. And I want to read that passage from his book. So here is Harry detailing that suicidal, I guess you would call it suicidal and homicidal discussion that she had. She was homicidal and suicidal. She was going to kill her baby and kill herself. So she's a homicidal, suicidal maniac is what she actually is in this passage. He says, I walked home from the office and found Meg sitting on the stairs. She was sobbing uncontrollably. My love, what's happened? I thought for sure we'd lost the baby. I went to her on my knees. She choked out that she didn't want to do this anymore. Do what? Live. I didn't catch her meaning at first. I didn't understand. Maybe didn't want to understand. My mind just didn't want to process the words. It's all so painful, she was saying. What is? To be hated like this. For what? What had she done, she asked. She really wanted to know. What sin had she committed to deserve this kind of treatment? She just wanted to make the pain stop, she said, not only for her, but for everyone, for me, for her mother. But she couldn't make it stop, so she had decided to disappear. Disappear? Without her, she said, all the press would just go away, and then I wouldn't have to live like this.
She puts herself in the middle of the press all the time. And in a part of our history, the last 2 years, where there's a tremendous amount of actual suffering going on, it is absolutely insulting to the average person around the world that this spoiled, snotty, entitled brat is whining and feeling sorry for herself, that people don't like her because she's obnoxious to them and disrespectful. How about being nicer? How about being a more decent person? How about that for a solution to people not liking you?
Our unborn child would never have to live like this. So if she kills the baby won't have to live through bad press. That's what she's saying to her husband as she's crying, right? If I kill our child, then our child won't have to read all of the bad press. It's so clear, she kept saying. It's so clear. I just have to stop breathing, stop being. This exists because I exist. I begged her not to talk like that. I promised her that we'd get through it and that we'd find a way. In the meantime, we'd find her the help she needed. I asked her to be strong and to hang on. And that, my friends, is the point in this book where Meghan orchestrates manipulating him to leave the royal family. And he can't see it because he's thick, as we've learned throughout this entire book. He's very thick, and he believes everything that she says. He believes every time she cries, every time he...
Who remembers when Harry was in the army, when he was fighting in Iraq or Afghanistan or where he was, and he seemed like such a tough dude, and now he's being utterly manipulated by a spiteful American? I mean, that is not a good look.
That she's a person that's in pain. No, this is a 40-year-old woman who manipulated her way from the bottom to the top by marrying somebody who was the producer on the show who gave her her start in life, then divorcing him and finding a prince that is too thick to see what everybody else in the entire world can see. And of course, by the way, he's got an incredible memory when it comes to his conversations with Meg. He's got an incredible memory about every instance that he and Willie have a bang up and a mash up, and every time that they exchange words. But during a particular phone call in which Willie clearly laid out for him why he disliked Meghan, point by point by point, explaining to him how rude she had been to people that worked at the palace, how rude she had been to Kate, Harry, his memory just goes foggy. He says he's too tired to remember what Willie had even said on the phone. He was just too exhausted. He doesn't remember anything that Willie said in that entire discussion. So that disallows us to then assess whether or not Willie maybe had some points about the fact that he was concerned that his brother was going to marry someone that everyone thinks is a sociopathic narcissist. He can't remember that part. It's too foggy. All he remembers from that conversation are that her tears were glistening. Meghan, overheard it, and her tears were glistening as she held her belly, and she was pregnant before she threatened to kill her unborn child. So, yeah, it goes on and on with how many times we learn that Meghan cried and was in a heap and was in a puddle. And I think we're supposed to feel bad for her. And Harry, I think by the end of this book, you're supposed to realize that Harry is just a really sad, unfortunate person because he was born to give a spare kidney to his brother or something. That just so factually, listen, that conversation never happened, okay?